In this video, we're going to be looking at the derivative of AXN. So we're going to look at how you can calculate the derivative quite quickly without using the first principles. So this is when you have questions such as fx is equal to AXN. So n is a certain number, so you have x to the power of something, then you can have a constant out the front. So if you have this, fx is equal to AXN, then the derivative is equal to a times n times x n minus 1. So effectively what you've done is you've got AXN here, and you've taken n and you've brought it down the bottom. So it was a power before, and then you brought it down here, and that's where the times n comes from. Then, whatever the power is, you reduce it by 1. So if it was like x to the 3, then it will become x to the 2. If it was x to the 10, it would become x to the 9. So you reduce it by 1, n minus 1. So if we looked at an example, if we had fx is equal to 3x squared, then the derivative, so that's a simple for derivative, well, we bring the 2 down, so we get 3 times 2. So the constant stays there, and we times it by the derivative, the original power, so the 2, and then times by x, 2 minus 1. So that is equal to 6x, because 2 minus 1 is just 1, so x to the 1 you can just write as x. So that means if we had fx is equal to 3x squared, we can find the derivative quite quickly by using this formula. So we bring the power down and then we reduce the power by 1. But remember that when you bring the power down, you bring the original power down. You don't bring the power minus 1 down. So if it was, let's say, 4x to the 3, you bring 3 down, so you get 12x squared, rather than 4x squared and then you bring the 2 down. So that's wrong. But this is correct. Fx is equal to 4x cubed, f dash x is equal to 12x squared. So doing another example, try and have a go at this question. So if we had 4x squared, what would f dash x be? Well, you bring the 2 down, you get 4 times 2 times x, 2 minus 1, so that is equal to 8x. So once you've done these a few times, they'll become relatively straightforward, because you can remember bring the power down, reduce its power by 1, and remember the formula AXN, a times n times x, n minus 1. Okay, so what about this question? This one's a bit trickier. So have a go at it and see what you think the answer is. So the first step for this is to realize that 1 over x squared is equal to x to the negative 2. And that's true for all different types of fractions. If you have 1 over x to the 10 is equal to x to the negative 10. So whatever, if you can put any type of integer there, x to the whatever is equal to x to the negative that number. So you have 3x squared. So fx is equal to 3x negative 2. So we haven't started working out the derivative at all yet. We've just put the fx into a term where we know how to calculate the derivative. So if we want to calculate the derivative, well, we bring the power down, so it's 3 times negative 2 times by x negative 2 minus 1. Because remember, whatever this is, so n, in this example, n is equal to negative 2, and here we have n minus 1. So n minus 1 is going to equal negative 2 minus 1, which will give us negative 3. So this will equal negative 6 to the x negative 3. And we can, if we want, write in the form negative 6 over x to the cubed. They're the same thing. So we've calculated the derivative from here. So what about if this was a question? Find f dash 4, so the derivative and then 4, if fx is equal to 3x squared. So the first thing you want to do in this question is you want to find the derivative. So f dash x, and this is equal to 3 times 2 times x 2 minus 1, which is equal to 6x. So 3x squared is equal to 6x. Then f dash 4, well, we substitute x to 4, so whenever there's x we substitute 4 in, so we get 6 times 4, so we get 24. So that's the right way to do it. You don't want to sub in first and then differentiate, because if you do that, then you'll get 0. So what I mean by this is you don't want to have fx is equal to something, work out what f4 is, So let's say that is equal to 30, and then differentiate 30, because if you differentiate 30, so if you have f4 and then you differentiate, you're going to get 0 every time. So what this notation means is you differentiate and then you sub in 4 for the x. If you sub in 4 first and then you differentiate, you're always going to get 0, and that's because you're going to get a constant, which we'll just talk about in a second. But the important thing for this is that you don't sub in first and then you diff as you'll get 0. You want to do that. You want to differentiate and then you can sub in the value. So following this method I've just done here. So what I was saying before about the constant always equaling 0 is if you have fx is equal to c, so c being a constant, a real number, then f dash x is always going to equal 0. And you can use the previous formula. When we had axn, we can say that c, so let's say equal, let's say 5. Then 5 is equal to 5 times x0, because x0 is just 1. And then when we bring 0 down, we get 0 times 5 times x negative 1. So 0 times 5 is always going to be equal to 0. And if it was just a constant, well, then we can say the constant is equal to constant times x to the 0, and 0 is always going to come down the bottom, so we're always going to get, when we differentiate, it's always going to equal 0. Another one is fx is equal to gx plus hx. So before in all the other terms we've just looked when there's been one term. But what about if xx has multiple terms? So this could be if fx is equal to 4x squared plus 2 over x minus 3. So obviously there are 3 terms here. Well, the derivative of fx is equal to g dash x plus h dash x. However, this is only for addition, and we'll talk about if they're multiplication later. However, in this video we're only going to look at addition, so such as fx is equal to gx plus hx, so these are all addition or subtraction. And if that's the case, then the derivative is just equal to the derivative adding all the other derivatives or subtracting all the other derivatives as well. So subtraction. So how would we work out this then? If fx is equal to 4x squared plus 2 over x minus 3. Well, we can work out the derivative of all the individual terms, and then we can just add them all up. So if we have fx is equal to 4x squared plus 2 over x minus 3, then we can say the derivative is equal to 4 times 2 times x1. So I've just done that term. Then this is, if you remember, 2 over x is equal to 2x minus 1. So that's equal to negative 2 times x minus 2, and then minus 3, that's a constant, so just plus 0. This is equal to 8x minus 2x to the negative 2. So we can calculate we can differentiate, find the derivative of fx if there's multiple terms as well.